G'day ladies and gentlemen, how y'all doing? Scotty49 here with you once again for another installment in the How to Play Warhammer 40,000 series. Now, this is video number 16 in the series, and as you know, if you've been following along, we've been going through the core mechanics of the game, the different ways you can play the game, and the different army list construction options that are available to you as well. Now, in both this video and the next video, we're going to be covering terrain features and the rules that you'll be using for them in your games of Warhammer 40,000. But ladies and gentlemen, before we jump into it, if you feel like doing so and you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button down below, as we're slowly growing the community over here in YouTube, and it's really awesome to see. And I got something special coming up, as I promised when we were going to hit that 100 subs. I'm going to start working on it soon. It's going to be absolutely awesome once it's done. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump into it. Alrighty, so as I said at the start of the video, we're going to be talking about terrain features. Now, terrain features is what you'll use to create your battlefields that both yourself and your opponents will play your games on. It is completely up to you and your opponent in terms of what terrain you actually place on the battlefield to create the landscape that you'll be fighting over. Now, as I've said, this is part one of the terrain features videos in this series, and today we're going to be specifically looking at the different types of terrain categories. Now, there are four main types of terrain categories in 9th edition of Warhammer 40,000, which are hills, obstacles, area terrain, and buildings, and generally all terrain gets classified into one of those four categories. Now, each category will have its own rules for their use in your games, as well as depending on what models are in your army as well. Some of them will be able to gain additional benefits of cover, but we'll get a bit more into that into next video as terms of what those benefits are and what terrain features they apply to. So the first one up is we've got hills. Now, hills could just be a pile of fuel barricades, a bunker entrance that's got an embankment over the back of it, or just a natural grassy knoll hill. Hills are considered to be part of the battlefield rather than a terrain feature in itself, which means that generally they don't get any additional benefits. Now, when you're moving your models over hills in general, you just use the normal movement rules to do so. There's nothing funky going on there. And when you're looking to see if a model is visible on or behind a hill, you just use the normal rules to do so as well. So true line of sight and following any other terrain rules that are in the way as well. And the other thing is that hills also cannot be the targets of attacks, both ranged and melee weapons, or psychic powers even. So you've got to be, cognizant of that you can't just target the hill over there to just get rid of it off the battlefield. In previous editions, there have been special rules in place through certain supplements to be able to play that kind of game where you are allowed to destroy terrain features, but the majority of terrain nowadays, you have no capability to do that in the current rule set. The second one we have got is obstacles. Now, obstacles could be a barricade, a ruined wall, or even fallen trees littered across the battlefield that your models have to move over or around. Now, when moving over an obstacle, you again use the normal rules for movement when doing so. When you're looking to see if a model is visible when they are on or behind an obstacle, again, you follow those normal rules when determining to do so, much like hills. Also, obstacles can't be attacked again like hills, as we've already covered. A lot of these will have the very similar traits here as well. Now, this is something a bit different for obstacles. If your models have the infantry, beasts, or swarms keyword within 3 inches of an obstacle, you do gain the benefits of cover unless your opponent can draw a line of sight, so drawing a 1mm line, from the attacking unit to all parts of the model without crossing the terrain feature. So it means that if you've got a guy that's, yes, within 3 inches of the obstacle, but is hanging out off the side and you can draw a line of sight, you don't get the benefits of cover for that model, but the other models behind it you still do. The third type is area terrain. Now, area terrain is the most common type of terrain used in your game. From ruined buildings to craters to woods to manufacturing areas, whole heap of different terrain features are classified as area terrain. Now, area terrain will generally have its own footprint on the table, which is the boundary the terrain piece has on its ground level. So it doesn't matter if the footprint on the ground level is different to the footprint on the first or second, you still follow the footprint on that ground level. And generally, it's shown by that base. So you'll see some ruins, for example, they'll have just a small sliver of a base around it, whereas some will actually do just a full block of it so that it's got like a massive square and it might be angled on the side. So different terrain features will have different bases and different rules to go along with that as well, so bear that in mind with area terrain. Now, when you start to move models over a piece of area terrain, again, you're still following the normal rules for movement when you do so. You will also still follow the normal rules when looking to see if a model is visible when it is behind the piece of area terrain. You can't attack pieces of area terrain, much like obstacles and hills, and models that do have the infantry, beast, and swarms keyword that are in a piece of area terrain do gain the benefits of cover as well. Now, we've got terrain type number 4, which is buildings. Now, buildings do differ from the others in some ways. Now, buildings in your games will typically be taken by players and by use of a fortification network detachment, and they've got the fortification role with the building keyword. You are to consider buildings as units rather than terrain features, so that's something that's important for the following rules. You still use the normal rules when you're seeing if a model is on or behind the building is visible to it, or if they are visible to another model. So it means that it's going back and forth now. Now, each building will have its own data sheet, and unless it otherwise states, it is considered either a friendly or an enemy unit, which means that some models can't actually move across them, but they can be chosen as the target of an attack. So if your opponent has taken a fortification, you can indeed take your Centurion Devastators with las cannons and fire that thing into the dirt, if you choose to do so. But that about covers it for the 4 main types of terrain features, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, well, I hope that I've been able to give you a nice, clear understanding of the different terrain features that you can see and use in your games, as well as the rules that do surround each type. Now, in part 2, we'll be digging a little deeper into terrain features and looking at the different traits that they can have, as well as the common terrain features that you'll be using in your games and their associated traits, as well as the rules that go along with those traits as well, because that's what the benefit of cover gives them. Now, if you do have any questions at all, feel free to ask me down in the comment section below, and I'll be happily be able to give you an answer and help answer you as best as I can. If you haven't already, feel free to hit like and subscribe on the video as well, which would be greatly appreciated. Now, if you don't want to ask your questions here on YouTube, that's okay. Feel free to come and find me over on Twitch when I am live on Tuesday and Friday nights and Saturday afternoons, Australian Eastern Standard Time, where we do hobby sessions, live games, and event coverage as well. And you can ask me there, and I'll do my best to answer you whilst we're live as well. But if you don't want to do it there, feel free to jump into the Discord. We've got over 120 members in there where you can ask a question, and if I'm asleep because I'm in Australia, then someone else that's a part of the community that's on various continents around the world will be able to jump in and answer that question for you. And I might even chime in once I wake up as well. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to tune in for part 2, and I hope to catch you soon.